Hey, everybody, welcome back to another conversation with another stranger. I love these shows because what happens is initially I thought that I was going to be doing this along on the road. I had written this book called The Mosaic, which is over my left shoulder. And it was the story about a boy who lost his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asked the adults where his parents are, they told him they were in a place called heaven. So that boy set out in search of the place called heaven. But the people he met on the road were not the clergymen and the rabbis and the ministers and the shamans and the priests and the holy men and the swamis. They were the trash man and the blind woman, the homeless guy and the juice man, the street worker and the gardener, the waitress. They were common, ordinary people. And he wondered, what am I sitting with these people for? It doesn't seem like they're going to teach me much about heaven, but he thought I don't have anywhere to go. So I might as well just sit and listen to them tell me their story. Well, in listening to them tell their story, in 100% of the cases, what he realized is the people he was sitting with now were completely different than the one he walked up to. And that wasn't because they had changed. It was because he no longer saw them the way he saw them. He saw them the way they were, based on their stories. And he wondered, I wonder what I would see in life if I got out of life in general. I wonder if everything in my life is not, I wonder if I see everything the way I see these people, that I just see the way I see things. I don't see the way it is. And I wonder what I would see if I could move myself out of the way and see what is. At that moment, he saw a monk unzipping the sky and inviting him into a parallel reality where he met the wise one who was the keeper of the mosaic. That's it for the book. They sponsor the show. I had that obligation and my desire to share that with you. I just want you to know that. But it told me that I should go out on the road and do the same thing my character did. And I was all set to go. And then we got hit by a pandemic that froze the whole world. So I'm doing it now virtually through the comfort of my own living room chair, speaking to people all over the globe. And today I have the honor and privilege of talking to someone who has extremely good taste in universities. I found out, I was searching, for some reason I had this desire to go back to my university, my little college that I went to, Pitzer College. When I went, there were 700 people that were there. And I was the first male class. So there were 50 men it was an all-girls school before I was there. And the year I came, it was the first year it turned co-ed.
Were we in the same class then? Class of 80?
No, 74.
Okay, I thought incoming 76 was the first, so they were lying to us, but that's all
Well,
right.
no, incoming graduating 76 would have been probably.
No, it was yeah, because that was the year the incoming 76, graduating 80 was the year that all the service academies went co-ed.
Gotcha.
And I thought that was when CMC and Harvey Mudd also went co-ed.
Yeah.
So Pitzer may have predated them.
Yeah, when I was there, CMC, Claremont Men's College,
Right.
was still all men.
And Harvey Mudd was still all men.
And Harvey Mudd, I wasn't smart enough to even walk on their campus. But Pitzer in those days, and it was, I would love to talk to you about your experience of Pitzer because.
Oh yeah, for sure. I loved it. I was actually speaking about it with somebody else 2 days ago, who's actually teaches at CGS right now. But we weren't there at the same time. I think he was a CMC grad.
So we jumped in, and in going in so quickly and in me talking so much, I think I forgot how you told me to say your name, but I'm going to try
Cellin.
it. Say it again.
Cellin.
I'm here with Cellin Gluck. And we already know that we went to the same school. We already know that we weren't there at the same time. But we don't know anything more about you. Cellin, will you tell us a little bit who you are and what you do?
I'm a filmmaker. I make movies when I can. I also direct commercials. I was born and raised in Japan and Iran. And let's see, I went to Pitzer out of my high school in Japan.
Serious?
Yeah.
How Pitzer? How did you find that little hole in the wall school?
Well, we had a pretty good college counselor at our school. I mean, our school was probably the same size as Pitzer, but it was from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Wow.
It was an American school in Japan called Canadian Academy, believe it or not, because it had been started, I think, now nearly 100 years ago by Canadian Methodist missionaries. The Methodists, they did some good in Asia. There's a lot of the educational institutions, higher institutions of learning and things were started by the Methodists, and still a lot of them still exist in Japan and even in China. And then a buddy of mine actually ended up at Harvey Mudd a year before I graduated. We were actually supposed to graduate together. We'd applied for early graduation from high school, and all we had to do was double up on history and English, I think. And if we got good grades, we could leave a year early. But I got involved in theater in high school, and there was a great play that was going on what would have been my senior year, which I would have missed had I left. So I stuck around. My buddy each went off to Harvey Mudd, and that's essentially how I heard about Claremont.
Wow.
And I applied to all of them. Back then you just you sent in your application, you waited for that big fat envelope to show up.
Yeah.
You filled it out. I think the application fee was like $15 or something like that.
Yeah.
And you put it in the mail, and you waited months for an answer.
Yeah. I want to just roll it back a little bit, because Pitzer College, for those people who don't know, was part of the Claremont Colleges, and that was a group of 5 colleges that were each really well known in their field. Pomona liked to consider itself the Harvard of the West. They didn't even know that Stanford existed, which was up northern California. But Pomona had a really good reputation. Harvey Mudd was like the MIT of the West.
Oh yeah.
Claremont Men's College was obviously a business school, and people went there to go and learn about business. Scripps, I'm not 100% sure what Scripps was, but it was an all-girls school. And Pitzer was a liberal arts experimental school. And my story is a little interesting because both my parents passed away. We grew up in a lower middle class family. But it happened that my mother's sister married a man who was a household name internationally. And so they had taken their daughter to go tour Pomona before she decided to go to Harvard. And I went on the tour with them, and I didn't really like the campus that much. I didn't, it was like, I don't know why I didn't like it. I just felt, and I applied to Pitzer and I applied to Tulane in New Orleans. And my aunt and uncle really wanted me to go to Tulane. And
right.
I went to Pitzer because it was the only, they said, Danny, you cannot go to an experimental school. But Pitzer was an experimental school amidst the Claremont Colleges.
Right.
And as soon as I said, well, I'd like to consider going to Pitzer, and they said, well, Pitzer would be fine. That was probably the worst mistake they made. But I loved it there. But then what happened is I dropped out after two years. Uh-huh. So I never finished there. Tell me what your experience was of Pitzer College.
You know what? I loved it. It was, I just remember loving everything about it. I mean, but let me qualify that in the 4 years I was there, I took 2 classes at Pitzer.
Yeah.
Okay. All my other classes, I mean, I went there to be an engineer.
Wow.
To study engineering, to Pitzer, right? I mean, what did we know back then? We only had those big fat books about I think they were put out by the same guys that did the SAT, and there was like reams of stuff about books. And, essentially you got in where you went. You went where you got in. Yeah. And I was going to go to Pomona. I got accepted at Pomona, then later rejected, which we can talk about later. That doesn't really matter. And I was in Iran during the summer, and I got the letter of rejection from Pomona. But I had my letter of acceptance from Pitzer, and I said, what the hell? So I said, it's on the same campus, I'll go. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, you said it was an experimental school, much like Mills up north. I mean, at one time, I believe there was credit for Frisbee throwing.
Yes.
We got there, you know. But look, at the same time, it
I
wasn't
think
the
I
fun.
initiated that class.
Oh, did you?
Maybe.
But you know, the thing with Pitzer was there were people who flunked out. Okay, I mean, there were art majors who flunked out.
Yeah.
I mean, you would flunk out. They'd send you off on academic You got academic probation 2 semesters, which I never got, thank God. And you made a contract that you'd bring your GPA up, and if you didn't after two tries, you were out. And you could go anywhere you wanted. You could go to Cal Poly. You could go to any of the community schools, bring your GPA back up, and come back. And you know, and in a lot of ways, yeah, we had art majors failing out. So
crazy.
You know, it was a tough school even back then. It's tougher now. We'd never get in if we tried to.
Yeah, no, I see what's going on now, and I'm starting to have some conversations with them. And I would love to do something like I'm doing now, and maybe we could do this together because you actually know what you're doing with film. But I would love to do what we're doing now for Pitzer, and create these stranger alumni reels or
you know, it'd be great. There's also a group, I think in the industry, professional entertainment professionals from Claremont or something like that.
Wow.
I mean, that would be a great Facebook group to reach out to too, because there's a lot of interesting people have gone through there.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah.
So what years were you there?
I was there from 76 to 80.
Okay. So if I would have stayed,
we probably would have overlapped.
We might have overlapped. As you were coming in, I would have been going.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't. And I love what you said is so interesting to me, because the beauty of the 5 college systems on one campus was they encouraged you to take classes wherever you wanted to take classes. So you could take.
Exactly.
You might not be able to get into Pomona, but if you got into Pitzer, you could take classes in Pomona. I think I took 2 classes in classrooms the whole time I was there.
Well, so you were probably in Carl Hertel's classes, which usually took place on the front lawn or down in the South Gallery, down by the mailboxes. You know, he was amazing.
And did you know Lou Ellenhorn when you were there?
I knew Lou Ellenhorn. I never took a class from Lou. But, you know, one of my favorite teachers my professors from whom I never took a class was also Barry Sanders.
Yes.
You know, Barry was great. Lee Monroe was my advisor, but he threw me out sophomore year because I started out in engineering, and he couldn't figure out why anybody in engineering was at Pitzer. And I said, because it's what I want to do. And he was mad enough about that. And then when it came time to declare our majors sophomore year, I went to have him sign my card, and I said, he goes, well, so what are you majoring? And I said, theater. And he said, that's it. He threw his hands up and he said, get out. And I said, come on, Lee. I mean, you're my advisor, you know?
Why?
And he goes, because he just thought I was a nutcase, I guess, going from engineering to theater. You know, it was just too drastic a change for him. But I could show him how I could still do it by overloading 1 or 2 classes. And I ran into Barry Sanders in the hallway. And he goes, how's it going, Cellin? And I said, not too good. He goes, what's the matter? I said, well, you know, we got to declare our major and get it all signed off today. And Lee Monroe just tossed me out. And he goes, so what do you need? You need a signature? And I go, yeah, Barry. He goes, all right, what are you going to major in? I said, theater. He goes, theater, that's good. And he signed my card and saved my ass, you know.
So if I'm not mistaken, Lee Monroe was married to Ruth Monroe.
Correct.
And I did work with Ruth Monroe in anthropology because I came right when the women's lib movement was coming.
Right.
And so being the hippie that I was all involved in, you know, women's rights and women's lib and all of that. And I remember walking into her class. I was the only guy in an all-woman class of women libbers who in that moment were not warm, fuzzy people. They were, you know, sort of.
Well, you had one thing in common. None of you had bras, you know, so it was fine.
But we were doing a study, and this was the type of stuff that I did there, which is why I loved being there.
Yeah.
We were doing a study on an African tribe where the men stayed home with the kids because they were the one that lactated.
Right.
So the women were going to work because the males breastfed their kids.
All right.
And we said, oh my God, the fact that we discovered this tribe, the fact that we could go there and research that and the probability of that, the fact that that could happen in the world that we live in could completely change the work dynamic of the world that we live in if we would get funding for it.
Right.
But the government wouldn't give us any funding. They were scared to death of us. But we did crazy things like that. So film and theater would feel like a natural byproduct of Pitzer.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, the film program at Pitzer was non-existent. We had, God, I can't remember her name. She's since passed away. She had a class, Beverly, that was her first name. And she had a class on film, which was just unbearable.
Oh, wow.
And I took it. There was a film department at Pomona, but it closed down, I think, my sophomore year.
Wow.
But that was about it. There really wasn't much for film at film or television at Pomona or Pitzer at the colleges. There were the 5 college players, and then Pomona had its own theater department.
Yeah, well, Pomona had. I remember walking through Pomona and seeing Brahms, Beethoven, and Zappa.
There you go.
I love that.
His mom worked at wasn't Huntley, wasn't Honnold. She worked at the business office there. That was right across the street from Huntley Bookstore. I forget the name of that place.
Wow. So, Cellin, what makes you happy now?
Waking up every morning, I guess.
Wow.
You know?
There are a lot of people. There are a lot of people who wake up every morning and have no idea what being happy is. Talk about that.
You know what? I at the moment, not to sound morose, I'm just happy to wake up right now. So
yeah.
You know, not that there's anything seriously wrong with me, but you know, and if we don't wake up, we got nothing to worry about. So you know,
right.
just move on.
You win both ways.
Yep.
So, how are you really doing in the time like this? We ask that question, and it's so random. And people say fine and great, and we go on and we think, you know, we're doing fine and great, and we let it go at that. But we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of a civil rights movement. We're in the middle of a you know, I thought we were in the middle of a women's movement when I was in Pitzer, but now 50 years later, this Me Too movement has really made an impact on the world.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of the foundation stones of what we believe in are being really questioned and jolted a little bit.
Yeah, and uprooted, you know, and it's just bizarre. I mean, I'm in an interesting situation. I'm in day 3 of a 14-day quarantine.
Wow.
So I cannot leave this 2-bedroom apartment. My son and I came up to Toronto because he's got work starting in 13 days or in a couple of weeks. And, you know, we landed in Toronto off the plane. They picked us up, brought us here, threw some food at us and said, you're not going out the door. I mean, we can't go out the front door, not even to take out the trash. So.
And is that because you came from America or what?
That is correct. We came from, you know, the germ basket of the world. So.
Wow. Wow. So they immediately put you in, and there was no question of testing you. Do you have coronavirus?
Oh, no, we had to take a test to just be able to get on the plane.
Wow.
Right. So we took a test a couple of days before we got on the plane. They let us on the plane because we had tested negative. And then we got here and it's a lockup. I mean, if you come from, you know, the length of the quarantine depends on where you come from. If you're a Canadian citizen, you still go into quarantine, but you get a test. And if the test comes back negative, you're out in about 3 days. If you come from the US, you know, there's just it's literally throw you in the apartment or wherever it is that you decide to shelter or quarantine and throw away the key for 14 days.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it is the level of seriousness with which this needs to be dealt with in our country. Yeah. You know, it's got nothing. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about liberty, you know, my freedom. You know, it's like, yeah, but go back and read all about liberty and freedom. And it's all okay to exercise those God-given rights or whomever given rights, those rights that we all hold near and dear. But these guys never bothered to read the fine line, you know? They never read the fine print that says, yeah, you are free to live your life as you want as long as you don't infringe upon the liberty or freedom of others.
Yeah.
And what part of breathing on me with possible, you know, implications of getting me sick, what part of that equates to liberty?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and what part of wearing a mask makes you less than a man? I mean,
So,
it's ridiculous.
so let's look at that, because what part of it does limit liberty? And I'm assuming, in the dichotomy of the world that we live in down here in America, that and let me just clear the field. I'm not a Trump supporter. Okay, so all right,
All
so
right, well, then I'm not hanging up. I
right,
mean, look, I'll listen to you, even if you were, but
right. So, but I think what's happening in the world today is we came from, maybe we had it, maybe we just believed we had it, maybe we never had it. Sort of a more altruistic time, where liberty was liberty for all, and we really talked about the fact that we could have liberty when we had liberty for all in our mind's eye. And then we became more consumed with this idea of, who cares about everybody? I just want to do what I want to do, and I want my own freedom. I want to live my life in freedom. And that takes root in a lot of different ways. Some that we agree with, some that we don't. Some of those are sexual preferences that people have. Some of them are religious preferences. Some of them, and so I'm not fighting one side of the ball or the other, right? Because I think everybody has their right to choose their life the way they want.
Absolutely.
But there's something to this thought of liberty and freedom that you touched on, that really, I think a lot of people listening, without going political, would just be interested in the conversation.
Well, I just think the problem is that everybody's gotten too complacent, and everybody, it's like all of a sudden, not that I'm a believer in God or the Almighty or anything, but this phrase, the God-given right to what? To bear arms or shit, to not wear a mask. I call bullshit on that too. And it's ridiculous. And I look upon people I grew up with, and I look at their posts, and the most ridiculous one I saw was, that somebody was arguing about the government or the mandate being mandated to wear masks. And they posted something about, one of those, I have a friend who has a friend who has a friend who's a nurse in an ICU unit somewhere. And she claimed that this person claimed, true or not, that, that the COVID case had gone down to the point they had more cases of people with staph throat infections from wearing dirty masks.
Wow.
And how you take that and twist, which is obviously a matter of personal hygiene. I mean, do you wear your underwear for 5 days and wear it on your face? No. Okay. So you wear your mask, you wash it. Hello. You wear your mask, it's dirty, you throw it out. But no, because the government is mandating that you wear this mask, and I'm too fucking lazy to have it cleaned, I've got staph infection, so it's the government's fault. I mean, what it's pretzel logic. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it's this removal of any kind of personal responsibility, and that everything is granted to you. That's the problem. The problem is most Americans have never left the country, and most Americans have never been without these so-called liberties. So how can you sit there and say, I have a God-given right to do this when you know no better or you know no worse?
Yeah, I love
it's
that.
Pathetic,
Yeah. Let me try and wind back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because and
don't get me wound up, because I'll just keep going.
No, I'm happy to have you wound up, and I'm happy to have you keep going. But I want to like burrow down underneath it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, I love where we're coming to, because I think that this is where we're at. We're at a place where people feel very, very strongly about what they believe. And the strength of what they believe has become siloed into people that believe like them. And we get solace from the silos of people that believe like us. And we get, lack of solace from the people. We get confrontation from the people that don't believe like us. And their silo is stronger, as strong, not quite as strong. It doesn't matter what those numbers are. But we're siloed up against each other, fighting each other around things that I don't understand when we started fighting each other like that. Like,
well, I mean, but the thing is, it comes down to and you know what? I wouldn't have so much problems with people fighting with one another if we were fighting about our own personal beliefs.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the root of it, it's our own personal beliefs. But most of the people on the other side, they're rah about something that somebody else is doing and nothing that they instigated, and when you sit down and examine what it is that they're fighting for, it's Chicken Little, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I can speak from a very personal place. I have a developmentally delayed daughter who lives in a group home.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And she's 30 years old, and I hated when she left years ago to go there because I just didn't want her to go, but she wanted to. She wanted to grow up
Right.
and be,
Semi-independent,
Yeah, and it's, I mean, everybody said to me, "Well, this is what you were striving for. You may have her make her own decisions, and she's doing this, and
Right.
isn't that great?" And I said, "No, it's not great. I want her to be with me, and I miss her, But,
Right. Be careful what you wish for.
Exactly. But thank God for Zoom, because without Zoom or FaceTime or things like that, I haven't physically had her next to me in almost 6 months. And we have no idea when that moment when I will be able to see her.
Right.
And her birthday's coming up. And I said, well, what can I do for her birthday? They said, well, you can bring food and you can sit outside, but you have to do social distancing. You have to wear a mask and you have to,
that's cool. Well, at least it's not you sit outside and she's inside in the window,
Yeah, thank God for that. Thank God for that. And so there's a part of me, and I don't want this to come across with any spin on it.
Right.
There's a part of me that looks at it, and there have been a lot of people. I think we've had over 200,000 people die in America from COVID-19.
We're getting awfully close to it. I think it's 187, somewhere like that right now.
So, give or take.
That they're counting,
Yeah.
So.
And I don't want to demean any of that, and I don't want to demean the sicknesses that people have had from that. And I also step back a little bit and just look at it from a little bit further apart. Put within those numbers, had COVID not been here, some of those people would have died of heart attack, and their cause of death would have been heart attack. But because they had COVID, they get funding for having it be a COVID-related death. Some of them would have died from pneumonia. Some of them would have died from old age. Some of them would have died from whatever it would have been. And I just don't know how many, like the beauty of this disease, if there's a beauty in it, is that for all the people that have gotten it, a small percentage of people have died from it. And in that small percentage of people that have died from it have also been other causes of death that could have been the reason why they died. You with me in what I'm saying?
I am, but you know what? It's more than obvious it's more than obvious that you're correct, but it's also more than obvious that the deaths of these people were, at least, if nothing else, was accelerated by them getting COVID-19.
Or exacerbated or something, right?
Yeah, it's like it may have been, they may have had pre-existing conditions that would have killed them in 6 months or a year or 4 years, 5 years. But you know what? When you're on your deathbed, man, that extra 6 months or that extra 4 years or extra 5 years or extra 5 days, makes a huge difference.
And I 100% agree with you. So this isn't a but, this is an and. And my daughter's healthy and I'm healthy. And the fact that I can't see her is so painful to me, because I'm 65 years old, so I'm in that quarantine person. She's developmentally delayed, so she doesn't have everything working in the way. So she is too, and the chances of us actually seeing each other in the near future are not very high, because nobody really knows what the heck is going on, and nobody even knows what the proper. I spoke to someone from India today. They just had 83,000 people get COVID-19 in one day yesterday.
Yeah.
83,000 people.
Yeah.
And
don't worry about it, because it's probably a hoax.
Right. And I asked them, what the hell happened? How did you get such a high number of people? And they said, well, when it first came, we took 20 days.
Oh, yeah.
Of complete isolation. We locked down hard. The stores weren't open. We could no transportation was open. Like, people couldn't buy food. They might have starved to death, but they weren't going to get infected, right there. And then we loosened up, because our economy had to come back. And when we loosened up, now we have these things. And so I see what's going on. And I also I think the undeterminability of how long this is all going to last makes it so hard if we knew, God, if you just play it out till the end of the year, we'll be fine and we're going to get up and running again. Or you'll be able to see your daughter, give it a few more months and you'll be able to see it. I'm livable with that. But yeah. I don't know when I'll be able to see her again.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. Okay. But I mean, and not to play devil's advocate or anything like that, but let me ask you point blank, would you take the next 14 days with her over and over, possibly being able to see her without restriction 6 months from now? That's my question to you. Yeah. And that's yours to answer,
Yeah. If I knew it was the next 6 months, no. I mean, I would obviously hold out for the next 6 months because I want to come back.
Yeah.
But the problem, and then like, I would be really interested in your opinion on this because you seem to have strong opinions on things. Tell me what you think about the virus. I mean, what is it? Not the virus, the vaccine.
I have no idea. I mean, the thing is, look, I think there's two ways to think about it. Okay, is that we keep pushing, and Trump keeps saying we're going to have a virus before the election. No, we're not. Yes, we are. November 1st, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but he is, leaning in that direction. I sure hope there's a vaccine for this. Okay, if we're relating it to the flu, yeah, there's let's get a vaccine for it, but it's not going to be a cure-all because the flu still kills people, right? I mean, it mutates, right? Andromeda strain, remember that one?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, but at the same time, let's look at the other major, shall we say, the plague or whatever that we've had in our lifetimes, yes. AIDS. There's still not a vaccine for AIDS,
yep.
Right? And it's been 45 years since it started devastating, the population.
Yep.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the vaccine is an answer. I think a rapid test is an answer. And I think more than a vaccine, it's got to be prevention, which doesn't mean staying in lockup forever. And also not a cure, but I guess a cure is a way. The treatment for it has got to come.
Yeah.
Because I'm not so sure. I'm not convinced that there's going to be a cure-all vaccine where we all march down and get pricked in the arm and it's like, okay, go, lick each other's shoes. It's not going to happen.
And anybody that's involved in it also says there's more and deadlier viruses that are still en route to us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we don't. Yeah, I mean, I think the one of the most interesting, not stories, but one of the most interesting topics or discussions I heard on it was that the COVID-19 virus has already actually mutated. And we know for a fact that there are two distinct strains. There's a strain, the China virus, as our friend calls it, which is actually, according to the studies, not the strain of the virus has essentially debilitated our country. That actually, most of our cases come from, they say, the Italian strain or the European strain, the strain from that side. Okay, then there was a talk saying that, and the talk was that it mutates on a regular basis. And right now, it's become more transmissible, or it's become more contagious, but less deadly. Yeah. And whether or not that's true, the argument behind it, or the mechanics as it was explained to us, is that why viruses eventually become weaker as they go along is because the deadlier they are, the quicker they kill the hosts. And if they kill the hosts, they can't transmit to anybody else.
Interesting.
So what happens is that the weaker variants tend to survive because it debilitates the host, but it doesn't kill them, so they can continue to live and spread themselves thinner, or spread themselves out. So, I mean, there's all sorts of theories and stuff that we could talk about this ad nauseum, but the fact of the matter is we have to let science decide.
Yeah.
Okay. And it has to be a situation of, yes, personal preference. Absolutely right. Look, I agree on freedoms and I agree on liberty. But I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is it cannot be at the expense of you affecting somebody else.
Totally. Totally.
You know what? Dress what you want, call yourself what you want, do to yourself what you want, do it in your room. I don't care. But you know what? If you want to shoot yourself in the head because that's what you want to get off on, then go out in the field and shoot yourself in the head. Don't shoot yourself in the head in the crowd. And going out and not wearing a mask and walking around the mask and walking around and beating yourself in the chest and saying that I've got liberty and I've got freedom, you know, and God gave me the right to carry guns. Well, that's the latter, you know. You're shooting yourself in the head in a crowd. I'm not going to stop you, but at least I am going to point you away, you know. And what part of that is so difficult to understand? And that's the part that I don't get it. It's logic, you know. And everyone says whatever you believe in may be logical to you and it may be totally illogical to somebody else, but I don't really think that anybody can argue with, you know, with the logic that I was just, you know, expounding, shall we say.
Well, one of the beautiful things about the book I wrote and the story and just the world that we're living in here now is that the truth of that story is that we think the way we see the world is the way the world is.
Yeah. Well, that's why we have flat earthers and everybody else.
Right.
And if you believe in something hard enough, it's got to be true.
Yeah, but the way we see the world is really just that, the way we see the world. It
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with the way the world is, but we see it that way and we believe it. Let's turn off of this subject a little bit.
Perfect.
If you didn't have to make a living, what would you do? In other words, if money wasn't important, what would you do?
I don't know. Money wasn't important. I'd just try to be happy, you know, sit in my house.
In quarantine?
Build it out. No, you know, out,
No,
out
please.
and about. You know, it's not my house, so as soon as I'm out of here, I'll be happy.
Right.
I have no idea. I think the true luxury of not having to worry about making a living, right, is being able to do what you want, and even being able to do what you want at that moment. You know, it's like okay, I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to study for 3.5 years, and I'm going to give it up. Okay, then it's like now it's too late to make a career path, or you've just wasted 3.5 years of your life. But you know what? For those 3.5 years, I learned what I wanted, and if my livelihood doesn't depend on it, why not?
Yeah.
No, go out and try everything you want to try. Go be a crab fisherman if you want. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't kill you, come back and do something else. It's this rut that we find ourselves in, where every decision that we make is a life-defining decision.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to be free from if I had all the money in the world and didn't have to worry about making a living. You know, then every decision isn't a crisis. You know, oh Jesus, I got to worry. What am I going to do if? Forget about that. Just go out and do what you want.
What kind of movies do you make?
Let's see. I made the 4 films that I've been involved in directing portions of it. Actually, there's more than that if you count second unit and things like that. But the latest film I made was about a gentleman called Chiuna Sugihara, and was a Japanese diplomat stationed in Lithuania at the outbreak of World War II, and he's credited with saving the lives of over 6,500 refugees,
Wow.
mainly Jewish refugees from Poland and Germany and other parts in Lithuania, by giving them visas to travel to Japan, against the wishes of his government.
Right.
And if you extrapolate 6,500 people in 1941,
Yeah.
and I met a guy here in Toronto 4 years ago, a nice Jewish rabbi, and he claimed that his grandfather was one of the people that was saved by Sugihara, and
Wow.
his grandfather had 256 descendants, and he was
Wow.
one.
Wow.
He goes, the Catholics are not the only ones that go out and multiply.
Right.
We Jews, we go out and multiply too. So one guy, 256,
Yeah.
6,000 of them. I'm not even going to try to do the math in my head,
Yeah.
but that's a hell of a lot. That's well over 1 million. I'm not going to say that that's what it comes down to, but saying that there are over 100,000 people alive on the face of the earth thanks to Sugihara, that's not an exaggeration. Of course, he's not the only one credited with saving refugee lives, but I made a film about him. It's been going almost 5 years now.
Wow.
The one before that was a Japanese-American co-production called Oba the Last Samurai, and it was about the invasion of Saipan in 1944, and about a Japanese captain who refused to surrender to the Marines, but he also at the same time refused to follow orders from the Japanese higher ups, which was to either commit suicide or to participate in a suicide attack against the Americans. So he hid out in the jungle, and is credited with saving 500 or 600 lives. Many of them civilian, and that was, all these films have been for Japan. The one before that was a Japanese remake of Sideways, the wine movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the one before that was a sci-fi, once again, World War II classic battleship destroyer, destroyer submarine chase. And a friend of mine was the director on that, and he called me up and asked me to do the American portion of it, and then so we did. And those are the kind of films that I've been working on as a director.
Fabulous. If you were to believe that it's important to push your edges, what would the edge be that you would push right now?
Maybe that front door. No, but I'm not allowed to do that. I don't know. I think it would be to push, not to sound moralistic or whatever. I think it's important that you push your own edge, whatever it is. You got to push your inhibitions, and stop putting shit off. How long have we heard that? And I continue to do it. There's something I should have done by 3:00 today that I forgot. Forgot is a much more convenient way of saying it than I didn't get around to it. Right?
Yeah, or I didn't want to do it, or I just couldn't
didn't want to do it, or whatever. I think it's important.
So where go into that for me and tell me what would be one personal edge that you would like to push beyond its edge?
I think it's to push myself harder to get myself out there. There's a part of me where I got a big mouth, I talk a lot, and then there's a part where you sit there and you hold back, and you get a little bit reserved at the wrong times. It's like, I'm not going to go as far as saying who gives a shit what people think of you, because that's important.
Yeah.
But it's like, move on. How many times have you dealt with people who have done things to you that you think that you would never forgive them for, and 3 days later you've forgotten about it?
Yeah.
So not to say that anything you do to anybody else are going to forget about it in 3 days, but don't be so damn hard on yourself.
Yeah. I had a stark realization years and years ago that people were too busy thinking about themselves to really think too much about what I was doing. And it really just woke me up, because I was always, at that point in time, way younger than I am now. I was thinking, well, what will they say? What will they do? And I realized they don't even have the time to think about what I'm doing. They're so caught up in what they're doing. So, let's try a lightning round for a little bit. See where we get with it. Okay. Dog or cat guy?
Both, but more cat.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Lately, it's been coffee, but I prefer tea.
Are you a conservative, not only politically, but just the way you live your life? Do you live like a conservative life, or do you live a liberal life?
I'm gonna let you guess that. It sure as fuck ain't the first one.
I always let people have this chance to say it. I could have answered it for you from what you told me already. Do you feel like your whole life you fit into the world that you live in, or have you always felt a little bit different?
I feel like my whole life I can fit in anywhere, whether I do or I not allow myself to, or whether I have or not is a different story.
So, like, I know what it feels like that you can fit in.
Yeah.
But does that mean that you feel a little different than anybody because you know that you can fit in?
Let me put it to you this way, okay? Like I said, I was born and raised in Japan. My mom was Japanese American, born and raised in California. She spent the war years in an internment camp in Rower, Arkansas. Same camp as George Takei and others. And my dad was blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jewish American from New York who lied about his age and joined the Navy to go kill Germans, right?
Wow.
And then they met in New York after the war, and we ended up in Japan. My mother was the first American exchange student to go to Japan after the war.
Wow.
Because she was 4'10" and looked just like them.
Yeah.
When her friends told her to apply, she said, "Oh no, they want somebody that looks like Betty Grable." Oh no, they want somebody that looks like them.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Japan. I'm not going to say that I was ostracized, but we were ostracized for being mixed blood.
Yeah.
You know, I say jokingly that I didn't know I was Asian until I came to America,
Yeah.
because in Japan, we sure as hell were not Asians. We
Yeah.
weren't Asians, and we definitely were not Japanese. We may have spoken the language fluently. I mean, I spoke Japanese before I spoke English, but we were always gaijin, the foreigner, mixed blood, this, other. People would look at us and point, And I mean, honestly, when I left Japan at the age of 18, I was never going back.
Wow.
I was never going back. I couldn't have been happier to get out of there.
Yeah.
Because to me, as at 18, the only things that you saw are the things you didn't like.
Yeah.
You didn't miss the things you liked because you figured they'd be there always.
Yeah.
You wanted to miss the things you didn't like.
Yeah.
And I came to the States, and I think it was the first week in Pitzer. We're walking around the lawn, and it's when everyone's out, trying to recruit people for their clubs. This black girl and this Asian girl came up to me and said, "Hey, you want to join the Asian Students Association?" And I looked at them, and I looked around. I realized I was the only one standing there, and I go, "Me?" And they go, "Yeah." I said, "So what's that all about?" I said, "Well, it's mostly about Asian students who want to get together, and we have an association of Asian Students Association to do things together and I just said, you know what? I just got out of Asia, and I came here because all my life I was told I was American, and why would I want to come to America, then pigeonhole myself to going back into Asia? I couldn't understand it, and that's what I say. I didn't know I was Asian until I came here.
I understand.
Because, we look out at these windows. We don't see what other people see. We only see what we want to see, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I think I can belong anywhere. I mean, my wife gives me grief. My family gives me grief because, not just because I trained to be an actor, but if I'm on the phone, especially when I'm trying to convince somebody and they've got an accent, before you know it, I'll start sounding like them.
Wow.
And it happens in public. It happens in talk. I mean, half of it is fun, but it's that chameleon. You just sort of, you figure out how to make people comfortable, and you become comfortable.
Totally.
And the obverse of that, or the reverse side of that, is that sometimes there's nothing you can do to make them comfortable, and you just turn around and you leave.
Yeah.
Did that sort of answer your question?
Yeah.
in a roundabout way.
Totally.
Yeah.
What are you most scared of?
I don't know, because when I was 14, I was scared of death, and I didn't know what the hell it was. I remember sitting there with a good friend of mine, Jeannie from high school, and we were sitting there watching The Graduate, of all things.
Yeah.
And at the end, everybody's laughing, and and when he's sitting there banging on the thing, and they get on the bus and they drive away, everybody's laughing, and I'm crying. And my friend Gina looks over at me and goes, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I realized that my mom's older than me, and she's gonna die." And okay, that's sad enough, but the reasoning of it is like, I think back on it and it cracks me up, and I go, well, and when she's dead, she won't be able to come see movies. Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
it's like,
wow.
And then at about the same time, I could have been turned into one of the first goths back in the 70s.
Wow.
But I was depressed for, a while. I was always thinking about death and moping around. And my dad looks at me one day after I come home from school with my long hair, and he goes, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And I go, "I'm depressed." He said, "What are you depressed about?" He goes, "Dad, I'm afraid of dying." He looks at me and goes, "How old are you?" I go, "Oh, 14. And he goes, "You know what? Look at me." He goes, "I'm well into my 40s. I'm a hell of a lot closer to dying than you are now. So stop your moping. Go out and enjoy yourself, because before you know it, you're going to be my age. And then where are you going to be?" And I remember going, "Oh, Dad, shut up. I'm never going to make it to be your age. And besides, I'm never going to be that old." I'm 20 years older than he was then that day.
Right.
So
right.
I don't know what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of, I don't know. It's not like we were talking about earlier. I'm not afraid of not waking up, because if you don't wake up, you're not going to know it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think, I'm afraid of being destitute, I guess. But you know what? You get used to everything.
Yeah.
Right? Eventually. And at that time, then, if it gets really bad, you can climb up the building and throw yourself off the roof. I mean, I don't know what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
I think I'm afraid of finding myself in a situation of not knowing what to do. I think that's more frightening than anything else.
Wow.
or just cascading downhill because everything around you starts to turn to shit and you've got no control of it.
So are you scared of losing control?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, in some ways I'm a control freak, but
A lot of us are, so
whether we like it or not, we are, because we're more comfortable when we're in control.
yeah, yeah.
I just, and without sounding like a jackass, like I want to be a master of my own destiny, not because of all the bad decisions I've made over a period of 50 years, and things start to tumble.
I'll share a very personal story with you if you'll let me.
Sure, please.
My dad passed away when I was 13 years old, and he was my hero.
Yeah.
I was a mini me of him before mini me's were even known. We would go down to the Atlantic City to the board and walk on the boardwalk in the summers. And he was a 6-foot version of, I was a 3-foot version. And people would stop riding their bikes and just look at us walking. And the carts that were driven by, like the rickshaw carts of Atlantic City, which were there, people would say, hold, stop for a minute. We want to see these guys. And people would take pictures of us with their Polaroids and do all that stuff. And I looked at my dad. I said, Dad, what's going on? Why is everybody taking pictures of us? And he said, you don't realize it, but our waddle is the same. Our faces are the same. Our body shape is the same. And people just, I think, are just taken up by how close we are. So my dad passed away while I was away at camp. And before I went to camp, he came in to say good night to me. And he said, I'm going to leave early tomorrow morning. And you're not leaving for camp for a few days. But I just want to come in and say goodbye and say good night, tell you I love you, and I'll see you at Visitors Day. And I said, Dad, when are you leaving? You can't, like, I'm not going to not see you. How early are you leaving? He said, I got to be out the door at 4 o'clock, Danny, because I got to catch a plane. And I said, well, I'll get up at 4. I'll see you. At least come and give you a hug before you go. I never made it up that morning. My dad died making love to my mom 4 weeks later of a heart attack.
That's great. That's one way to go, huh?
Great way for him to die, not so great for my mom.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But what I made up was a story to bring myself some peace, because the fact that I could lose my idol in a random moment for no reason at all. He wasn't sick. There wasn't anything wrong with him. He was gone. One day he was here, one day he was gone. I had to create a story that, even though I knew it wasn't true, was a story that I could believe in, which is, had I woken up that morning at 4 o'clock to see him, he wouldn't have died.
Yeah.
Right? Because that gave me control over a random world that had no control, even though it didn't. And that story took years to unpack and take off. So I understand.
It is those, woulda, shoulda, couldas,
Yeah.
And you know what? It's interestingly enough, I think there is a lot of those woulda, coulda, shouldas that drive me as well. I have not had that experience where I should have gotten up at 4 o'clock, and because I didn't, I never saw my dad again.
Yeah.
But there have been things that are close. I remember my dad passed away from Parkinson's, complications from Parkinson's, respiratory complications. And I remember him at one time, reaching up, and I'm there, and he grabs me and he pulls me down and he goes, "Get me out of here."
Yeah.
And I couldn't, because he couldn't breathe without the help of a respirator.
Yeah.
And this is another one of those things, going back to the COVID-19, who died of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Both of my parents have passed now, but my father was in a respiratory intensive care unit probably for about 4 months. Yeah. And they bounce him around because Medicare, Medicaid only pays for so many things. He's in an ICU, then they have to change the qualifications and throw him over to, and we just wanted to get him home. But Medicare wouldn't pay for hospice.
Yeah.
Because Parkinson's is not considered a terminal illness.
Yeah.
Well, everyone knows it's not. Parkinson's doesn't kill you. It's you catch pneumonia and your inability to expectorate or whatever, you control your muscles. That's what kills you. So did Parkinson's kill you? No, pneumonia killed you, But the reason pneumonia killed you is because of your afflictions from Parkinson's.
Yeah, because you had Parkinson's.
And you know, of course, there's that. So that I have that.
As does every single
But
person listening also. I mean, I want to just
yeah,
invite the listener to come in and say, what are your moments like that? What are your moments where you should have woken up?
yeah.
Or someone said, get me out of here, and you knew you couldn't. It
And you know you couldn't.
it wasn't healthy. It wasn't safe. It wasn't the right thing to do, but you just feel like, God, that's all he wanted was to get out of here. And I could have, I should have done that.
And that's the last thing that you wanted, and I didn't come through.
Yeah.
You know, so I think a lot of time that drives me is like, I don't make it every time, but if people are leaving or if people are doing something, I always try to see them.
Yeah.
You know?
What excites you the most?
My kids, my family, hanging out with them. That excites me the most.
Nice.
Seeing them grow up, seeing them do stuff, seeing them come home. You know?
Yeah.
I think that really excites me more than anything else, especially now. You know.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
But, you know, on a more not so personal front, I mean, working, making stuff, making movies, you know, going out and being in that machine, making that machine work. And that excites me, you know, and being in the middle of it, you know.
What are you most hopeful for?
And I'd be an idiot if I didn't say, oh, I'm hopeful that we're going to get out of this somehow. You know, we're just going to get out of this somehow and learn to get along again, you know. I mean, like I said before, I can't spend time on Facebook because early on I was just getting into too many altercations with people I really care about, you know, people that I've known since I was 10 years old, 12 years old. And it's just maddening. And yeah, I'm equally guilty of pushing my views.
Yeah.
But it's like, wake the fuck up, you know? And so then what's the answer? The answer is not to engage. But then that usually means not to engage at all. And that's pathetic.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. And the thing is, you got to stand up for what you believe in. But look, there's, you know, moderation everywhere, including in moderation, and moderation including hate and all of that, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just that I've found myself not backing off, but just sort of better off left alone in too many instances lately, because I'm afraid of either hurting someone's feelings or having someone hurt my feelings or get into that situation, you know. And that it's sad. It's sad. We're all walking around on eggshells, you know?
Well, it's one of the reasons why I created this platform right here, you know, of having conversations with strangers. And it's been interesting to me to see that in the conversation, now over 100 conversations that I've had, and is that several people have said to me, and a lot of people have thought it and not said it to me, that somehow they feel safer talking to someone they don't know or don't know that they'll ever see again. And they're able to say something to them that they don't even tell their friends. Or maybe there's just some persona to this little face that I have that makes people feel that they can trust me.
I figure if I lie to you, I'm not going to get anything for Christmas.
Right,
so.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I've already got you on my naughty list. Don't worry.
All right, I'll save a space on my shelf for that giant chunk of coal I'm about to get.
There you go. But one of the things that I found, which is really interesting, is that I've had the opportunity to be with some of the wealthiest people in the world, not in their talks, but in their homes. Yeah. To sit at the dining room table with them, to meet their parents, to play on the floor with their kids. And I've also had the opportunity to meet some of the poorest of the poor.
Yep.
And I've sat on street corners with them on their cardboard boxes and shared a bottle of wine and a loaf of bread and a piece of cheese.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found in every single case, no matter how much money they had, what border they lived behind, what color their skin, what religion they practiced, what party they affiliated with or believed, is that everybody wanted these same three things. They wanted to be loved and accepted. They wanted to be listened to and heard. And they wanted to be acknowledged for what they were saying and validated. In 65 years, nobody ever said to me, Danny, I need you to agree with me. Because they knew, and some of my friends have the most fakakta beliefs you could ever imagine. but they're my friends, and I would take a bullet for them because I'm not friends with them because of what they believe. I'm friends with them because of what we feel for each other. And I think something in that has been lost. We sort of have put ourselves in these silos of belief systems, and we forget that some of our greatest innovations have come sitting with each other, with people of unlike mind, talking about the way we see the world, and moving towards each other in terms of what do you believe, what do I believe, how if I saw what you believe, might it help me to solve something I'm working on, and vice versa. And I just wonder if the movement that I'm trying to start is a revolution of listening. I'd like your thoughts.
I would disagree with you. It's a revolution of listening. And above all, like you said, in your 65 years of your life, no one's ever really said, Danny, you've got to believe what I'm telling you, or you got to believe what I'm saying. And not in the sense that I'm not telling you a lie, but you've got to take my beliefs to be yours. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's just, we watch the so-called ruler of the United States, and his behavior, let's just forget about right or wrong, but everything he does, everything he stands for is on page 1 of the textbook that any of our parents told us not to do.
Yeah.
Just lie, just cheat. I don't care about whatever. Well, it's not, we don't even have to go with stealing. But the worst part about that man is that there's no personal responsibility. I don't think he ever reflects and says, oh, I better not say that, or that's not true.
Yeah.
Everything that he says and does is foments hate, and it's always somebody else's fault, or he heard that somebody else had said that this and that and that. And it's like at a certain point, you just got to go, will you please shut the fuck up?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem, is that we've all in some ways become like that. And I think, I have one thing to thank the man for, is that I watch his behavior, and there's probably not a person in the world who can look you in the eye and said, I have not behaved like that at least one time in my life.
Yeah.
Right? And so let that be a lesson to you, is watch that, despise his behavior, and be careful that there isn't a second time in your life that you behave like that. And if that's the one thing I thank him for, it's for that. It makes you reflect, say, oh my God, I hope people don't see me like that.
Yeah.
And if more of us could think along those lines, I think we'd, it is part of listening, and it is part of believing, and it's just, it's I don't know.
One of the things that I always said to people is that the only things that people say to me that hurt me are things that are really true.
Yeah.
So if someone looks at me and says, Danny, you're the most beautiful black man I've ever seen, I'm going to say, I'm not beautiful, I'm not black, it doesn't matter.
One of them could be true.
One of them could be true, right? But if someone says, you're just an old, fat guy who's full of himself and then I start to go, oh my God, well, at least something in that is true. And I sort of take, either I can do one of two things. I can listen to it and say, God, that's interesting. Tell me more of what you think.
Or you can shoot him.
Or I can stand up and defend myself or attack back, right? And so what I always think is that when someone comes like that into our lives in a big way, the way he has, is there something that he's saying that we need to hear in ourselves? The trip that I wanted to take around the world was to be able, I talked to a woman who, in this room, who became a dear friend of mine. And she said, here's a piece of advice I want to give you from the trip that I took, that I learned too late. Realize that every conversation you have is a conversation of you talking to you about you.
Yeah.
And when you can see that these people are just you talking to you about you, you'll be able to go into that Ku Klux Klan meeting with white skinheads who you can't stand. And you'll hear something in what they're saying that you need to hear, which is what you've been saying, that you've been pushed down or blocked. Because if it doesn't make you upset, then it means you don't have it.
Yeah.
and you don't have to. That's great. Just notice what you notice and keep going.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something beautiful in the gift of all these things that we're being given as well. If we can stand back from it and say, there's something beautiful. I mean, there's some people that from the Democratic side of the equation that are saying, we needed a guy like this to mobilize a pretty diverse group of under the tent. And now maybe we'll come together and say, at least we don't want, like, we'll learn to get along with each other so we can serve a higher good in their mind, or not, whatever.
I think complacency on both sides is a great divider, and the thing is, when I say complacent, it's like when things seem so obvious to you that to be the only right choice, maybe it's not. Maybe exercise it for yourself, but don't force it down other people's throats.
Yeah.
And we have done that on the liberal side.
Yeah, we have a lot.
But I don't know what the answer is. It sure as hell is not him. That's for damn sure.
Do you think the world's trying to tell us something through all these things that are going on?
Yeah, cut the shit and get off the planet. I mean, look, think about it. It's like if the Earth, look. If a colony of whatever moved into your skin and kept shitting on you and kept injecting stuff in your skin and whatever, you do everything you can to kill this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, I'm not, go down that road of like the Earth is trying to get rid of us because we're trying to kill her or kill it.
Yeah.
But you just got to think about it. It's like, how long can a goldfish survive in a fishbowl if all it does is shit itself?
Yeah. Yeah.
If it eats the little guys that are eating your shit, it's going to choke you sooner or later. I think we just need to stop being so complacent or just ignorant and just sort of floating through life. Got it. Like that ride at Disneyland, you say, please don't stop to pick the flowers. But you know what? You got to stop and pick the flowers. So you got to at least take the time to sit there and notice that if all the flowers are dead or not.
Yeah, totally. I was speaking to a guy again in India, and he said, with all the things that are going on with COVID, there's a good side to it. I can sit on my patio now and see clouds in the sky that I've never been able to see.
Yeah.
Because the pollution in Delhi is so much less now. The Ganges is like lost 50% of its pollution within 2 weeks of nobody pouring junk into it.
Yeah.
We can see the Himalayas from 200 meters away or kilometers away, where we can never see it before. And so I wonder what is the goodness of all that's happening here. What do you see as the goodness that we're being given?
Well, it is time. It is sort of giving us the realization that you better take the time to stop and pick the flowers.
Yeah.
Use a cliche. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but the goodness out of it is that it's all given us the ability to take a pause.
Yeah.
I think that ability to sail through this pause for many of us is coming rapidly to an end, both economically, financially, and in terms of reality. We've got to get back to work. But, both sides have, I think we've got to, it is what it is. You got to learn to compromise, man,
Yeah.
It's like you can't just say blanket, say, open the schools and send everybody back.
Yeah.
And you can't say, close the schools and keep everybody at home. You can't say, keep the kids at home, but go back to work. There are certain realities that you got to face. But once again, it's not something that one side or the other can work out to their complete satisfaction.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, we've got to go back to listening to each other.
Yeah. When we listen to each other, sides become middle. Yeah. And that's where I think our answers come, because right now we're just fighting each other. I want to thank you for taking all this time and being with me.
My pleasure.
What an enjoyable conversation. And we touched on so many things. I really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit.
Definitely.
I want to thank those people who listen to the show regularly or as you listen to it, to for coming and being a part of it. And if you like what you're seeing,
and forgive us our pontifications, you know,
that's
as we forgive those who pontificate against us, you know, but whatever it is.
It's enjoyable. The pontifications are what makes it
Yeah.
enjoyable. And I want to thank you for coming and watching. If you like the show, you know, the way things spread is if you like something, you share it with people you like. And you can just share it with 1, 2 people, whatever you do. I also want to invite you to do what I do at the end of every show, which is take a moment and reach out to somebody you don't know and just start a conversation up. Just listen to what they have to say. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to help them. You don't have to change them. Just listen to them. And in listening to them, what I'm finding in this room is people come in as strangers and go out as friends. And when we live in a world full of strangers, we live in a strange world. But when we live in a world full of friends, we live in a friendly world. And the world needs us to be a friendly world right now. Right?
Yeah.
And how simple is it to just reach out to somebody and just offer to listen to them for a little bit and let them tell you what they believe and what they think. Who knows? You might just learn something. So is there anything, one last thing you want to say before we go off the air?
No, let's do it again.
Okay, great. I would love that. I would love to have that happen. So thank you again for all your time. And folks
Danny,
listening, thank you so much for being a part of it. Until the next stranger comes into this beautifully strange room, be kind to each other. Treat each other with respect. Reach out and see if you can make a stranger a friend. Until
be careful out there.
And be careful. Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Okay. Ciao, everybody.
Thanks.
Ciao.